From cut to captain, talk about a turn of events. Keegan Bradley, the same guy who was so infamously snubbed by Zach Johnson at last year's Ryder Cup, will now be the Ryder Cup captain himself. But that's not the only shocking and major twist. In fact, there's one that not many people are talking about, and that's the fact that we may see Phil Mickelson as Keegan's vice captain. And of course, as much as it was a huge surprise to see Keegan get the captaincy, we're going to talk in a second about whether or not we think that was a wise decision. The other surprise, of course, is the fact that Tiger Woods was offered the position first and turned it down. And a number of big names have weighed in on Tiger's decision to turn it down. We've got a lot of those quotes that we're going to dive into in just a second. But of course, we have to talk about whether it was the right decision to have Keegan Bradley take on the captaincy and what will be undoubtedly a pivotal moment for the U.S. team as they try to make up for a disastrous 2023. And remember, although Keegan has played on 2 Ryder Cup teams, he has never served as a vice captain. And usually that's a pivotal stepping stone towards the captaincy. And what we'll talk about in a minute also is that Keegan Bradley is now the second youngest to ever captain the Ryder Cup team, second only to Arnold Palmer. So there's a lot to dig into there. But before we do, of course, we want to thank this week's sponsor, Titleist. And guys, we all want to believe in the golf ball we're playing. And if you're looking for a golf ball that gives you low flight, low spin, and incredibly soft feel, the Titleist AVX might be the right fit for you. And look, who does not want more distance? The AVX is long from tee to green, and it's got that large, high-speed, high-gradient core. But I think what my favorite part about it, of course, is the soft feel. I really love playing a soft feel golf ball, and we all know how important scoring is 100 yards and in, and that soft feel really helps with that feel and control around the greens. But what I can't emphasize enough is go out there, try it, get fit. Go to Titleist.com to find out more about the AVX and to find a place where you can get fit and try it for yourself. Now, Mike, we've got a lot to talk about here.
Sure do, man. Wow.
I mean, the first and foremost thing, I want to get into this kind of this crazy twist where, and maybe even not so crazy, because some people had speculated that Phil Mickelson would make a great vice captain.
Yep.
But there's no denying that's going to shake things up quite a bit.
Yeah.
But before all this could happen, one thing that had to happen, and that was that Tiger had to turn it down.
Yes.
Right? We know, and from seeing everything, the speculation, it all came true. Everyone knew the rumors, was that the job was going to be Tiger's if he wanted it. And that was the big question, the if he wanted it. And it was, and from what we're hearing, it was offered to Tiger. And there's no doubt Tiger would have made a great captain.
Sure.
But he said no.
Yeah, I think Tiger's got a lot going on. I think more than what people think. I mean, honestly, I could see Tiger being a captain of a Ryder Cup team, but I think maybe after he hangs it up, right? I don't think he's going to be this personal belief. He's got Charlie, who's blossoming. He's probably just wants to be, because think about what goes into those 2 years of prep. The travel over to Bethpage and, the scouting and the planning, the press conferences. Not only that, TGL starting, right?
Yeah.
It's his new indoor golf league. He's wrapped around that.
He's got a lot on his plate.
He's focusing on his game and getting better and competing. So it's like, hey, do you want to be captain? At that point, it's just like, dude, I can't right now.
It's just too much.
And Player advisory board. Just to boot. So
that was exactly what was echoed by Stuart Sink, who, by the way, is another person whose name was kind of floated around as a captain.
He'd be a great choice.
He could be a great choice as well. And that's why I want to dig into whether Keegan was the best choice, with guys like Stuart Sink, Freddie Couples as possibilities for Ryder Cup captains. But there's also I think, a reason why this shakeup was at the right time. But exactly as you're expressing was similarly expressed by Stuart Sink. He was asked whether he was surprised that Tiger ultimately declined the invitation to be the captain. And when he said, it doesn't surprise me that he's turned it down, because since he stepped into the board position, the PGA Tour is pretty busy right now, and he's got a lot away from the course too with his injuries and trying to recover and get himself in the kind of condition that he can play. He wants to play. I'm not surprised that he turned it down. It's probably a pretty big role when you consider adding to it all that stuff. So there was an interesting part of that, though, like Tiger still wanting to play.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. That's number one for him. Still competing, and that's what we want to see. We want that more than Tiger in the captain's role.
Right.
It'd be great to have Tiger Woods as the Ryder Cup captain for America. And like I said, we will see it.
We will see it. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
And this ultimately weighs the decision. You guys jump in the comments and let us know what you think is the right path forward for Tiger. But I kind of like listed it out and took a kind of like, what are his fork in the road decisions of where he could go right now? And one is, and because I truly do think that it's too much on someone's plate to try to take all this on. So there's not one answer where you can say, I'll just do it all. So Tiger, one, he said he can take on that heavy leadership role, which is what we've been seeing him assume with PGA Tour, which will now be PGA Tour Enterprises, and leading that into the future.
Right.
That's what we've seen Tiger. Yep. Tiger heading up the talks we've been talking about here week in and week out with the PIF, the Saudi fund, all that type of stuff, where that's going to go, how that funding's going to come in. It's now pretty much Tiger at the table, right? He's taking the lead on that. You also, as you mentioned, having TGL, which is going to be gearing up real fast and starting in just about 6 months. Yeah. And that, too, is under his Tomorrow Sports, which he started with Rory, and has a key investment with the PGA Tour. So that's in the PGA Tour. I mean, Tiger is deep in all of that leadership stuff. He also has the option to say, I can set all that aside and just focus on getting healthy and playing well, right? Look at Rory McIlroy. When he got too involved in leadership stuff, he found that he needed to back it off in order to focus on his game. But Tiger and Rory are two different points in their career.
Yeah, totally.
And there's been a lot of speculation, especially after this most recent performance at Pinehurst, of whether Tiger really, the most wise time investment for him is trying to continue to play.
Yeah, totally.
And we all know the tour wants him to play. In fact, they're looking at doing like a special exemption if they've passed it through yet. I'm not sure, but just where he's automatically in every signature event.
Yeah,
because the ratings, the tour wants him in the field. But that could also be not only what's best for Tiger, but he could be thinking what's best for the tour. Is it best for me to find a way to get healthy, to play in as many events as possible? Or is it best for me to step back and be a leader in different ways? And then the other path that I think he could take is kind of step out of the PGA Tour and more so say, my primary focus is going to be on majors and international events. In which case he would do what he needs to do throughout the year to get himself in the best playing condition to play in the majors and to be whatever that important role is, whether that's captain, vice captain, playing captain for both the presidents and the Ryder Cups. So he's got a lot of paths to pick.
Yeah, he sure does. I'm curious where. I mean, the one thing we forgot to talk about is his golf course design. That dude's all over the place doing that. He was just in New Jersey recently checking out one of the new spots. So, I mean, that and like we said before, Charlie, I mean, I'm sure he wants to be there for Charlie as he's like really getting competitive and moving pretty quickly in the golf world. So, I don't know, man. It's. Let me ask you a question. Would you say the Ryder Cup captain's role is a thankless job with an honor? Like, would you label it as that?
Thankless in what way?
Like, if you win, it's like you're not the reason for it. Maybe you are.
Well, look, we put a lot of blame on Zach Johnson being the reason they lost. I feel like
when they lose, it's all on them.
I think the captaincy is an incredibly vital job. Not only is it from the mentoring and the team, the creating a cohesiveness of the team, rallying the team, but also just being wise in saying, and you're up against some big personalities, which we're going to talk about in a minute, because I think that Keegan pick might shake some of this up.
Yeah.
But you've got big personalities that you need to pick when they're going. Are you going in the morning session? Are you going to be a double session guy?
You think Keegan's cut out for this?
I think he's
uniquely
he's cut out
so
for it.
He knows how it works.
I think he's uniquely cut out for it for a reason. And I want to talk about why that is, because I want to dive into the next big thing is like this decision in and of itself. Was giving Keegan the nod the right thing? So there's a couple things that bring doubt in my mind.
Okay.
And there's a couple things that I think reassurance, right? Starting with the doubt. The first one being is that there were other choices.
Sure.
There were other, what would have been very smart, very viable choices. I think the top two choices would have been either Stuart Sink or Freddie Couples, right? Stuart Sink, both of those are much more traditional paths to the captaincy.
Right.
So Stuart Sink plays in 5 Ryder Cups, was vice captain last year. That's a lot of experience.
Sure.
Right? I think in a lot of ways, he knows the guys, he knows the landscape. He could be a wise choice. Secondarily, Fred Couples. vice captain 3 times. He's been 3 times, which in a lot of ways would say like it's his turn, right? You would think like this is Freddie's opportunity, this is Freddie's turn before he gets any older.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, right.
And you get to a certain point. I know this comes up every 2 years, but you think if Freddie's going to get it at that point, when? Like he should have that opportunity as well. But keep in mind, both of those guys they're older guys. They're not as involved in the day-to-day.
I was just going to say that. Like, is the tour trying to get younger with things? I mean, they are competing with Liv. Having a younger face like Keegan as the boss of the team.
Right.
Strategic move. I don't know.
It is. And it comes with both, again, there's good and there's bad. We're weighing this out. And you guys jump in the comments. Let us know your thoughts. Was it the right decision to get Keegan in there? But speaking of age, Keegan's 38 years old. That makes him the second youngest captain. Jeez. The only younger captain was Arnold Palmer, who was 34 years old back in 1963.
Okay.
The game was different back. It was
sure.
Now, I'm not taking anything away from Arnold Palmer. He's the right decision, all that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. But it was different. It's now like we've got what we've set was a kind of a culture and a trend around the Ryder Cup where it is some of the older guys. Now, Zach Johnson's not that old. He still plays competitively, but 38 is a swing in the young direction.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. Also, the other big one, the elephant in the room, the lack of leadership experience of Keegan Bradley. He has never been a vice captain. Mm-hmm. Usually, like I said, that is the stepping stone to serve under a captain, watch the way they do things, and then use that experience to then put your own spin on it when you step into the captain role. He's not had that.
He doesn't have it. I mean, he's got the fact that he's a PGA Tour veteran, PGA Tour wins. I think guys respect him. They respect him enough to look up to him as a captain. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And his fire, like we all see his fire, and he's loved. You know what I mean? Like Zach Johnson became the most hated golfer on the planet after the Ryder Cup.
Yeah.
I think he wasn't really well liked leading into it anyway, personality stuff. But like the world got to know who he was through Netflix, through the Ryder Cup, all that stuff. I think Keegan's going to go into this with his captain's picks, everything that he plans, based on what should have happened for him. You know what I mean?
You think
he's not going to pick friends,
right?
He's going to show you this is how it should have been done.
But to be 100% clear, you think he'll do it the right way, the way it should have been done, but not because this is a subtle little difference. Not in a way of revenge.
Not in revenge. He's going to do it the right way.
Okay. Because I think there's some people who could take that as saying like, "Oh, he's mad about how it went.
Right.
He's gonna do some revenge picking." I think that's not true either. I think it's more subtle that he's gonna do it the way it should have been done.
No doubt.
It's the breaking of the boys' club.
Correct.
Because, and I want to talk about that as a benefit too in a second. But the last little reason what raises a little bit of doubt on the Keegan side is that him being still so in his competitive point in his career, granted towards the tail end, but in his competitive point, which he proved last year, there's also no ruling out at this point that Keegan couldn't make the team, right?
True.
So Keegan could have a good season next season. He could be another guy who puts himself in the running as a captain's pick. He could be another guy who could win, who could outright get in there. Yeah. So by taking the captaincy, yes, I'm not going to rule out the idea of being a player captain, but that's far more unheard of in the Ryder Cup.
Sure.
At least in modern era. Mm. So it does make me kind of wonder, like, is this him kind of taking his hat out of the ring?
What a story that would be. Player captain, probably goes like, undefeated, carries USA and his team. What a bounce back story that would be. It'd be kind of cool. Do you know when the last time they had a player captain?
I don't remember. Yeah. I the last that I can remember was Tiger 2019 President's Cup. Yeah. That said, let's talk about the positives, right? So those are the doubts, and you guys got to see, well, does the doubts outweigh the positives for you? Because, again, the stakes are high. We can't have another year of a doubt cast and a mistake around the captain.
Yes.
I don't think it's good. It almost feels like the safe play would have been to go with Sink or with Freddie and just being like, we're just going back to the way we used to do things. We're going to put the Zach Johnson stuff behind us and just move on, right? But this is a gamble. Couple reasons. One is that as proven by the Netflix show, and we saw the insight into it, he is not part of the boys' club. That's not to say he's not well liked and well respected.
Right.
He is, but he doesn't. It's very obvious he doesn't get involved in that clique, so to speak, of the boys' club. So by having an outsider, you're going to break that cycle of having kind of the boys club, same things. What I think that might end up doing is you might end up leading to a very different looking Ryder Cup team. Keep in mind, two longtime, arguably boys club staples of the Ryder Cup have been Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth in recent years.
Sure.
Both were captain's picks.
Yep.
Now, I will put this on record. I do not think that if either one of those guys has a great season and they're like the man right on the edge,
Yeah.
I don't think that he would, out of spite, not put JT on that team.
I think he would do it based on just the win.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. Like, this is where I think you might have a year where if those two guys are not having particularly good seasons, this might be the first time in a long time you don't see them on the Ryder Cup team.
And then, they shouldn't have saw Justin Thomas on last year's. Just my opinion.
And JT, overall performance wasn't terrible.
Right.
It's just that there were other guys who were in better form
guys
going
that are trending,
into that.
better form, right.
I just, where I disagreed with and will continue to disagree with Zach Johnson's decision is I didn't like his justification is like, I don't remember his exact quote, but it's like, how can you not have Justin Thomas at the Ryder Cup?
Yeah.
Again, just because that's the way things have been doesn't mean they need to be going forward. The other thing is that I think makes a huge positive for Keegan Bradley is that it's well documented. We've seen it. We saw it in the Netflix thing. We've seen it in countless, interviews, articles, headlines. He lives and breathes Ryder Cup.
Yeah.
When it comes to, if you're saying someone who put in their passion into something, I don't know if there's a better pick than Keegan Bradley. Here's a guy who never unpacked from the last Ryder Cup. Yeah. Remember that whole story?
Right.
Here's a guy he's said on record, not a day goes by that he's not thinking about the Ryder Cup.
That's cool. That's what you need as a captain.
Right. So I think that is a huge plus. I think that he's going to spend every minute over the next year plus in preparation of this and thinking about
It's a semi-home game prep, too. It's East Coast. He's a Boston guy or probably a Florida guy. But still, like, it's not a European location.
Right.
So I see Keegan doing the damage. I see Brooks is going to be on that team no matter what.
You think it's a no matter what for
I think
Brooks?
a no matter what that guy did in 2019 at Bethpage.
Sure, but he set the course record.
Yeah.
But that was a long time ago.
You're right. That goes against what we just said about the other guys. But, yeah.
But what I do think is that now what's on the table, which wasn't prior, is guys like Bryson DeChambeau.
Yep.
If he continues his hot streak and playing the way he's playing, I don't think he gets overlooked just because he's not accruing the points. He would have to be a captain's pick.
He's a no-brainer.
That already shows you a dramatic change. Like, if you were to see and this is assuming there's a lot that can happen in the next year, if Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas don't have particularly good seasons and they have to rely on a captain's pick, and if guy like Bryson DeChambeau is having a great season at LIV and maybe in the majors and has to rely on a captain's pick. If he has a great enough season in the majors, he might get in like Brooks did.
Sure, right.
But you know what I'm saying. I think with Keegan in there in that role, you never know.
Yeah.
You never know. All bets are off. The boys club is broken, and anything can happen.
Anything can happen, right?
Speaking of anything can happen, we got to get into this major twist because it does involve Tiger. It also involves Phil Mickelson in the vice captaincy. And there's a very clear path for Phil.
How's that going to shake out?
To be the captain and the vice captain, I'm sorry. For Phil to be the vice captain. And if he is, the question is, would Tiger be involved and what would be his involvement because of what's going on right now with the negotiations not being in the best place right now still with LIV and stuff like that. So we're going to dive into that in a second. Let's do a quick word from our sponsors.
So FootJoy is the #1 shoe in golf because they offer the widest selection of sizes, styles, and performance options of any golf shoe out there. Whether it's the spikeless performance of the Pro SLX, even the Pro SLX Carbon, or the Premier Series, the shoe that is far away the choice of more tour players than any other shoe. When it matters most, more players choose FootJoy.
It's so true. That's why we saw so many different varieties at the U.S. Open this year. From the guys wearing the Premiers and the so many different flavors of that, especially the unique red, white, and blue U.S. Open ones, to even like the winner himself, Bryson DeChambeau, was wearing those Hyperflex. That's been like my choice. I've been one of my biggest go-tos this summer has been the Hyperflex. I still think it's the shoe of summer. But no matter which one you pick, trust the brand that's been #1 forever. Trust your game to FootJoy, the #1 shoe in golf. All right, so jump back to this. What will be Tiger's involvement. What will be Keegan's vice captain's picks? That's going to be the next big hot talking point, the speculation. And many people have said that, like, it would be wild to not see Tiger in any capacity. You know, it's back here in the States, doesn't require traveling, you know, to Europe. It's a place that Tiger's had a lot of success, Bethpage Black. It would almost seem silly to not have him in some capacity. It's just whether that's going to be a formal capacity or not. And I was listening to Smiley Kaufman's take on this the other day, and it was actually, you know, it brought up an interesting point, and this is where Phil works in. So what Kaufman said, he said, the vice captains is interesting because I think Phil Mickelson's a really close friend to Keegan. But I have to imagine that since Tiger turned it down, it's hard not to see Tiger being a vice captain. And I just don't see a world in which Tiger and Phil will be vice captains together. So with that being said, I don't know who else they could have picked. So
okay.
Think about this for a second. So I've heard, and I don't know how close their relationship remains, but I've heard plenty of times Keegan talking about it, that he's a close friend of Phil's, at least he was. I don't know, that I haven't had an update in the very recent years. If you guys know more about it, let us know in the comments. But there's speculation that they play a lot of golf together. In so many words, Keegan's referred to Phil as kind of almost a mentor to him. So now you think about this combo, like what if it is Phil as a vice captain under Keegan? Now it's like boys club broken, like shattered. There's no boys club anymore.
No more, right?
Right? And but is that too controversial? Does that swing the pendulum the other way? It makes me wonder, for as much as we are hailing the ability of Keegan Bradley to be seemingly unbiased, right? Does Phil make it biased in the other direction? Would you see Phil, who understandably that's been his role of pushing the agenda of LIV, could you see Phil coming in and in the ear of, it's ultimately the good news, it's going to be up to Keegan.
It's going to be up to Keegan, right?
But he's in his ear now saying about guys and how they're playing on LIV. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
Like, how does that change the dynamic?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think you're right in that if Phil is vice captain, I don't think Tiger would be. It would be an incredible Ryder Cup if you had Phil and Tiger as vice captains, and then you had Michael Jordan as like a locker room inspiration.
Right. Well, that was the other big note I have here, because, like, think about it. MJ is one of Keegan's idols.
Huge fan. Yeah, that
he's been around the Ryder Cup so much.
Right. Keegan's been wearing the MJ shoes.
Right, and I could definitely 100% see, and that's where too,
just goes.
He has such a silent influence, Michael Jordan. You know, just having the competitive nature of Michael Jordan.
Having him in that locker room.
Just having him on the sideline watching sometimes. You know, with that look where he's just watching, make sure you perform.
Something about when the greatest of all time at something is in your presence.
Right. Can you imagine a Ryder Cup? I mean, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. New York, you know, it's this huge sports arena. Bethpage Black. You got a young captain in Keegan Bradley. Whoever his vice is, it's going to be an interesting dynamic, whether that's Tiger, whether that's Phil or somebody else. And then imagine you have Michael Jordan come in and give the locker room speech to get them riled up on day one. Jeez.
Come on.
What do you want?
That'd be incredible.
Right. But there's so much that can play out. As Tiger continues to have his role in PGA Tour enterprises, and as they continue to indicate, although we're really not seeing it, you know, the actions and the words matching too much yet. But if a deal gets done with the PIF, if a merger happens, whatever it may be, maybe things change dynamically with Phil and Tiger as part of those negotiations, and maybe this becomes the bridge, the coming together.
It might be.
You know, where now that maybe the leagues are working together, and now you've got Keegan Bradley and your vice captains are Tiger and Phil. I mean, as much as I get the point that Smiley's making, I don't want to rule it out either if we're at that stage in the game.
Right, if everyone's friendly.
And now it's just we work together to put the best team forward. They got a couple of PGA Tour guys, a couple of LIV guys. Who knows?
Could be like the biggest New York area sports event in history. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and no doubt, like a possible, healing moment for the game of
And
golf.
a total healing moment for golf.
It
yeah.
very well could be, or it could be the opposite. It
Right.
could continue to
This is their opportunity now to bring it together. It's so golden.
right, but a lot
Seal
still
it up,
has to
Jay.
happen. A lot still has to happen, and that's where Tiger in that leadership role and it's been keeping him so busy. So, you know, who will it be? We're going to continue to watch that closely. Who's going to be that vice captain's pick? If you've got some of your own ideas, remember, continue the conversation in the comments. And it could be a very interesting dynamic. But at this point, I think it was a bold decision to put Keegan as the captain. And I'll be honest, I'm going record right now. It would answer the question that we keep posing. I think it was a wise decision.
Yeah, I
Do you
agree.
agree?
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, because I think at the end of the day that having a guy who lives and breathes, you know, you cut him and he bleeds, you know, Ryder
Yeah.
Cup red, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
A guy who's that invested, a guy who is going to be a shakeup and possibly outside of that norm of boys club. But that being said, I would still like to see one day Freddie to get that nod if he wants it. Maybe behind the scenes he doesn't. It's a lot of work, but I think it was a wise decision. And I from a fan of Team USA, I think it's positive going forward. It makes me look forward to it even more.
Yeah, I think there's no other guy out there more hungry to win a Ryder Cup right now.
True.
So they made the smart move.
True.
No
That's the
doubt.
hunger. The hunger matters.
Yeah.
So that's everything we have for you guys. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast. We'll see you in the next one.